Welcome to the Builders of Authority podcast, a show committed to helping you build authority for your brand. In the realm of business and personal branding, authority stands as a cornerstone. Authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. So join us as we build something remarkable together. And now, here's your host, Adam McChesney.
Welcome back to another episode of the newly rebranded Builders of Authority podcast. I'm not going to lie, I've been looking forward to this episode ever since I actually started podcasting. So while this guest may not have known he was going to be on my podcast, I sure did. I wrote down his name as a guest that I wanted to have back when I was just getting started. Been following him since 2020, and the fact that he's here in studio today with me, I'm just blessed for this opportunity. There's few people that are truly who they say they are. In today's world, it's tough to find people who operate with that mindset, operate with those standards, especially when you're doing as much as my guest does here today. I've listened to a lot of his podcast episodes, read multiple books, and consumed almost every piece of content that I could have, including an episode that he did a couple years ago with Ed Mylett that I was listening to this morning in preparation for today's episode to make it the best it possibly could be. My guest today is Ben Newman. While he doesn't need much of an introduction, Ben is the #1 continual peak performance coach, a top 50 speaker, and 2 times Wall Street Journal bestselling author. He's the host of the Burn podcast and works with Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes from all major sports, and has worked directly with teams like Alabama football and Kansas State football. Ben, welcome to the show.
Adam, thank you for having me. I tell you, it feels good to get into a studio. You mentioned 2020, and we got so accustomed to being out of studios for shows with COVID.
Yes.
And, you know, our show, 95% of the episodes are still on Zoom. So it is good to be in person with another STL kid straight from the loo. So thanks for having me.
Yes. And so I've been following you for a while, and I just, like we were talking about before this episode, you're like, we got all these things going on. And I'm like, man, everywhere I look, you got something going on. So tell the audience a little bit just about like your overall journey from kind of where you got started in entrepreneurship and all the different things of really what you've worked on.
Well, probably similar. I'll even take you even further back.
Yeah.
Very similar to probably so many of your listeners. A lot of my mentors and coaches in my life have considered me an old soul. Meaning like you had to go through a lot in your life to get to where you are. Mm-hmm. And I was always blessed to have coaches and mentors who were there to pick me up off that mat of life when I felt like I had nothing left in the tank. I didn't want to go any further. I didn't want to do anything. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones who helped me build a resilient mindset to keep going, coupled with the experience I had maybe 7-8 minutes down the road where my mom was a single mom fighting to make ends meet, who her last year living, we had 24-hour nursing care in our house. Yet she still had the strength, the perseverance, the conviction, the burn inside of her to come to the dinner table every single night without fail to ask me how my day was at school. Mm. And so when you have that sort of an example in your home that led you, even though my mother passed 11 days before my 8th birthday, it's now given me this perspective that even though you can highlight all the things you want to highlight, say you've listened to me with Ed or these other individuals, I'm still going through it. I've still got 2 coaches. I'm reading books every day. I'm trying to find ways to get better. But I always go back to my mom's perspective where, for me, I've been able to find great strength to help me continue to fight, continue to attack. And I think a lot of individuals, when they slow down and go back to the perspective, they realize even though the world will throw it at you, there's strength inside of you that's come from what you've been through.
Mm. I mean, I've heard that story a couple times, and every single time I hear it, I heard it again when I was listening to the podcast this morning. It just like hits me. Like I haven't gone through something like that, but you've taken that experience, that tough time, and made it your mission really with the burn. So talk to us a little bit about like what that is for you and how the podcast has kind of played into some of those things as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned the work with some of the highlights of the clients that you talked about, Alabama football, Kansas State football, and NFL teams, and these blessings and really dream opportunities for me that have happened. Mm-hmm. Well, I've been doing this for over 18 years. So there's a lot of, you go to a lot of masterminds. I know you're big on personal development, growth, branding, and helping your clients grow their businesses. And so you know what it's like to go to those masterminds. And there's a lot of people who they'll start a mastermind and they got into this work like 3 weeks ago. And you realize like, I think he just changed his bio. How did I sign up for this deal? I've been doing this a long time. Mm-hmm. And I've had to go through a journey of starting with my old high school basketball team when my coach called me to going all the way back to getting a coffee cup to go and give a speech and give a talk. And so when I think back to all of those opportunities, you realize like, no matter where you are on your journey, you've got to lean into that chapter that you're on and realize that you're going to learn something incredible about yourself and be willing to fight from there. And so for me, a lot of the fight, the attack, the building, for me just comes from those experiences and leaning in and attacking and doing those things one day at a time, which is really what it comes down to for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about attacking and one day at a time, I am a huge fan of your prize fighter day. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think that sets the tone for obviously one day at a time, but really the compounding effect of showing up each and every single day.
Yeah, so starting back, to add just one more thing to your question previously, is that burn that you have, which turned into a podcast, was really what I saw from my mom, which ignites those prize fighter days. But it's really that burn that I believe everybody has. And in doing this for 18 plus years, that's the secret I've found that the highest performers have that most coaches miss. People talk about why, they talk about purpose, which is so significant. But I've found it's actually this underlying burn that ignites your why and purpose that causes you to be disciplined on the days that you don't want to do it, but especially after you win. Most people get seduced by success after they win.
Yes.
You go and you learn from an Alabama football. There's no being seduced by success. Coach Saban never allowed that.
Yeah.
Right? And I was at Alabama for 5 years and 2 national championships. It wasn't like I gave a speech there one time. Like, I was part of the program. And so you realize these things, there's this burn. And so for me, there's this burn that my mom passed at 38. I'm 45, which means I've been given 7 extra years that my mom never got. You better believe I'm not wasting a damn day ever. Which when I built and developed what I call a prize fighter day, it was fueled by this burn. If I connect to that burn and I'm not going to waste a day, what does that day look like? And so for everybody listening, imagine you go deeper than your why and purpose and you go to that burn that lies inside of you. Maybe it's somebody who sacrificed for you and you said, I'm not going to waste my parents' sacrifice. My mom and dad had 3 jobs each for me to have an opportunity. Or right now for you in your house, Murphy's watching you, even though he's, a young boy, like his eyes are watching you. Well, guess what? They're going to grow up like my boy one day and my daughter one day and be 15 and 13. I promise you those eyes are watching you.
Oh, yeah.
At 5 months, you might be like, does he know what's going on yet? But like they will be watching you.
Yeah.
And there's that example that you set. So that's a burn for you. I want to be that example. Or maybe somebody listening goes, my whole life, everybody told me I couldn't do it. They doubted me. You're not good enough. You're too small. You're not this. You're not smart enough. And then there's that burn. See, that's different than why and purpose. If you grew up in a house where somebody told you that you couldn't, or you grew up in a house where people at school told you that you couldn't, there's this fire that you have that when you connect to that, you will show people who you are. And so when you connect to that burn, and then everybody has that opportunity to break down, what do I need to do every day to win, personally, professionally, and in my service to others? And then you choose to do those things every day. People realize that winning is far more in your control than it is out of your control. But people want the results so badly, and you hold on so tightly to the results that you forget to do the things that actually cause you to win. So the Prize Fighter Day just encourages you to stay connected to that burn, stay focused on the things you can control, and then stack those days of winning, and then the byproduct is championships in business and in sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the things that you said there is really just people are fascinated with the end result, and they don't focus a lot of times on the journey. And the journey is that day in and day out stuff of showing up each and every single day. A lot of times people will get to that next level in business and in life, and then they're like, wow, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And then they're unfulfilled, and they get lost along the journey. So I think that that's a key piece that I just see people struggle with all of the time. And with that, I know that I had heard it again on the podcast this morning, is the alarm on the phone. I love that. Talk to us a little bit.
So now you got me in studio. You could be like, I could actually test him and see if this is real.
I got it on mine as well.
So a lot of people don't know, and Ed absolutely loves this. And what Adam's referring to is when I was on Ed's show, Ed's like, you got to tell him about your phone. I'm like, my phone and my alarm clock. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you really want me to talk about that? So here it is. So you can see the time, and then it says Janet Fishman Newman Legacy. So there you go. Zoom in on that.
Yeah, 2:44 a.m. as well.
2:44, and then Janet Fishman Newman Legacy. And so you see that my mom's name is here. So if that's my burn, so now I want everybody listening to picture, okay? Now this is my story. My story is not going to motivate you, but I know that every single one of you has a story that's listening, right? That's what's really going to drive you and inspire you. This is what inspires me. So imagine this alarm goes off, and that's the first thing I see is my mother's name, and I know that every day is a gift that my mother never got, what do you think the odds are I hit the snooze button? It's not happening. Now, there's also the environment piece, which I explained, which a lot of times when it comes to discipline and behavior, people fail to create the environment that caused them to be disciplined. So what do most people do? They get this phone and they put it right next to their bed. So the moment you wake up, snooze button. That phone for me is in the bathroom, which means I have to get up out of bed and physically walk to another location. So you're not wide awake at that point, but now you're up, and now I'm looking and I see my mom's name. I'm not going back to bed. Yeah. Plus, my wife's going to kill me if I get back into bed anyway. Amy's going to be like, what are you doing? Like, it's too early.
Yeah. Well, no, when I literally listened to that episode right when it came out, I guess it was like 2.5 years ago, I changed my alarm to what I feel like my burn is, and
what is your burn?
And so I have
you can't do that to us. Now I'm gonna flip the mic on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I have trouble explaining it a little bit, but like mine is, I guess, a little bit more my impact, and I kind of got confused maybe a little bit on like what the burn is. But right now, it's to impact as many people as I possibly can. But diving deeper into like what my burn is, I believe is I grew up, and everybody kind of told me to go do this. Like they were like, go to college, go get married, go get the job, go have the house with the white picket fence, thing like that. And I just want to prove people wrong, that like I came up from a very good family. I had everything that I needed, but like I wanted more. So I don't know if that like kind of answers your question, but like that for me is what I look back as I was thinking about it as I was listening to the podcast this morning. I'm like, that's just what I do. Like anytime somebody's like, Adam, like you've done good, like maybe you need to pump the brakes a little bit. I'm like, no, I want to keep going.
Yeah. See, so you just really said for all of us an example of what many people struggle with. So you actually now, because the author of the burn is in front of you, you're like, do I say, is this right? Is it wrong?
Yeah.
That was right. That was more than right. And it was 100% yours and what drives you, which is what caused you to look into the details and say, we're going to rebrand because this name needs to be in alignment with the name of the company. So it's this constant pursuit of how can I get better? So your burn is 100% right. But many individuals, we doubt. We doubt when we're doing things right, right? We question when we're doing things right. I do the same thing. Why do you think I still have 2 coaches? Just because this is the work that I do, and yeah, I get to work for Saban and Coach Kleiman and all these great coaches or NFL players. You think that I've got it all figured out? Right, so I doubt myself too. And so we have to stop doubting ourselves. Your burn is your burn. That's a hell of a burn because it continues to cause you to go. So I think for everybody listening, doubt your doubts and believe your beliefs. You know, so that comes from somewhere for you to where there's something that happened that causes you to have doubts. And I always encourage people, you got to lean in and you got to figure out what that is, and you got to silence that self-talk, and then you got to replace those fears and you got to replace it with the action. And that's where a lot of people miss in a world where everybody wants to tell you how great they want to be. And then it's like, all right, let's put you on a podcast. Yeah. Let's have a conversation with your action. And I'm going to find out how bad you really want it.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think, I'm sure this is where the conversation will go. But people are probably finding out about me. I get this vein that starts popping out of my neck and I get fiery. And it's not me yelling at anybody. It's me just saying I'm passionate and I care. There's too many people that get on a podcast just to try to entertain people. I'm not here for your entertainment. I'm here because I want to make a difference in your life.
Absolutely.
I coach people because I want to make a difference in your life. We're throwing this huge St. Louis summit, which I can't wait for you to be at, bringing in Jerry Rice and Trent Shelton and Chris Pronger and Jackie Joyner-Kersey, Sal Frisella at First Forum headquarters, not to entertain you. Because I know that there's proven systems we've built in 18 years that are going to change somebody's life. That's what motivates me. So that then they don't waste a day. So if my burn is to not waste these days because of my mom and her legacy, I want somebody else to have the same. So yours is 100% right.
I appreciate that. Appreciate you working through that with me. And I'm excited for that event. I think like it's unique for me to kind of see a lot of this stuff take place in my backyard where I'm like, man, when I saw that, which is kind of how we reconnected, right? I had been asking Ben for a long time, like, hey, let's get on the podcast. And we were busy and things like that. But I knew you were just a busy guy. And so I actually, shot Ben a message. I was like, hey, congrats on throwing the event. Like, I'm definitely interested in the event. I said, but hey, let's also get you on the podcast. And you were like, hey, come to the event and we can have a conversation there. And I said, all right, sounds good. So I literally bought the ticket and then sent him a screenshot. And he's like, wow, you're taking action. Let's get that podcast
That's my
booked.
kind of
I'm
guy.
like, that's just who I am, right? But as we were talking about before the episode is like in this professional self-development world, there's all these events, there's all these coaches, there's all these masterminds that like I've been a part of them, you've been a part of them, we all know them. And like 90% of them are just based on theory. They're based on like finding out somebody else's way to success and then regurgitating that content, which is going to happen. But what would you say is like the biggest issue in that space right now of like coaching and self-development? Because I think it gets a little bit of a bad name at times, but when finding the right coach or the right event, like it's changed my life. But there's a lot of fluff that's out there in the world.
So unfortunately, we live in a world where many of the individuals that you hear understand how to attack somebody's emotion. And people buy off of emotion.
Yes.
So you can get somebody excited. You got to wake up every day and you got to grind, you got to grind, you got to grind. Like, I'll get you to grind and then you'll take it to the next. And people, I want to grind. And it's like, what a bunch of bullshit that is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, what does that mean, grind? Right? Like, you tell me the tool that you actually teach and you've coached somebody with that actually breaks down and reverse engineers what the grind is. Yeah. But at the end of the day, most of the individuals, they know when I say grind and I get excited and I put some popular people up on a stage or some influencers, people are going to come to that event. That's not enough for me. That doesn't work for me. And so for me, there have to be tools that are attached to proven results and action steps and disciplines. We're on the 4th edition of Your Mental Toughness Playbook. Your Mental Toughness Playbook has been bought, purchased, or downloaded over 1 million times. Those are the same 6 mental training tools, Prize Fighter Day, all those things. Those are things I've been using for 18 plus years of doing this work. I know those systems work. I say this very humbly. I have plenty of national championship rings, bowl rings, all these things that are at home at my house. I've helped companies, Google, Microsoft, some of the fastest growing organizations in the world. A lot of the work that I do with influencers, some of your favorite influencers, I do coaching work behind the stages. People have no idea that I'm even doing the work, teaching them to do things the right way because of what I believe in. So I think you have to be very careful in this world that we live in, that it's not hype that leads you to take action. Now, I can get people fired up and excited, but I promise you I'm going to teach you tools. Now, I can't do the work for you. I would if I could. And when people who know me, like, I would do all the work for everybody. Yeah. But you're going to have to choose to do the work for yourself, but I will give you the proven tools. Yeah. And then when somebody comes to an event, I'm going to give you a Jerry Rice. Yeah. Because when Jerry Rice and I did our first event together back in 2016, he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, Ben, you know what this was in the green room before we take the stage. I said, Jerry, what makes you great, man? And he actually makes this statement rather than really answering the question. He says, you know what I've never understood? How could somebody not give 100% when it's 100% their choice? You see, it goes back to the choices. And then you hear Jerry talk, and it's just like, wow, he's like telling you exactly what you need to do, but then he's an example to give you a choice. What are you going to do about it? And so that, for me, it's great. People hype. And there's so many amazing coaches that are out there. Like, I'm not saying this, bring me all the business. Like, we're busy. We got plenty to do. Yeah. But I just think you have to be careful who you choose to take your advice from in a world that is cloudy, in a world that is scary, in a world that is confusing, and in a world where people understand how to manipulate people.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I like what you said is like you have 2 coaches, right? So if you're working with and you're going to learn from somebody or somebody's going to be a mentor of yours, you want to make sure that they're continuing to evolve as well. Right. And that's something that you do every single day and kind of transitioning a little bit, but the workout that you do every single day, tell people about that.
I knew you get me in studio, you're going to ask me about the workout.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Pretty insane.
So, Coach Saban hires me in 2017. At that point in time, it was a really unique opportunity for me because I was working for the North Dakota State Bison, who my first year there was Carson Wentz's senior year. They win a 5th straight national championship. I'm wondering why the hell did they even bring me in? They were already winning national championships. But Coach Kleiman believed in me. So you're working with these champions. I had already started working with NFL players. At that time, I'd already worked with Super Bowl champions. And then you get this Alabama offer. And it was something about that Alabama offer where I learned about expectation at North Dakota State. You learned about legacy at North Dakota State. They'd won all these championships. And then you learn it in working with. But when I got hired at Alabama, and you walk into the Malmore football complex for the first time in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and you walk in and you feel this expectation. It's like Saban created a play. Like you would walk in that building and you're like, oh, I'm getting goosebumps even talking about this.
Oh yeah, I'm
like
getting
you feel it. Like I felt it. Like this place is just different.
Mhm.
And I walked in and I was already in shape then. I was already working out then, but I realized I got to take it up a notch. Because this is the most storied football program in the history of college football. This place is different. So how can I respond differently? How can I? And that's what that environment does to people. Me as a performance coach coming in, as a mental conditioning coach, as Coach Saban liked to refer to me as, you're the mental conditioning coach. So all of a sudden I'm going to walk in looking like I ate a bag of donuts? No, you better walk in looking like you're pushing and challenging yourself. So it was that point in time. Once again, I'd always been in shape, but I really started to turn it up. And I really started to attack to the point where I would work out with the tight ends after practice. We'd literally leave the practice field, they'd go lift, and I'd be lifting with them, and they'd look like, well, this is a different level of respect I have for this guy. This guy didn't just motivate us to motivate us. He's all about getting that action in with us and breaking a sweat, pounding that weight to his chest, pushing it out, and working with us. And then that evolved into what is now this unrequired workout, which has become like this wild, deal that people want to do. And when I speak at events, they're like, will you do an unrequired workout? And essentially it's 45 minutes, 10 different exercises, all body weight, from planks to wall sits to all kinds of, you plank for practically 10 minutes straight. It's 4 minutes and 44 seconds laying on your back, feet 6 inches above the ground. Then you flip over, regular plank, 4 minutes, 44 seconds. So it's mental toughness. It's physical. It'll break you. Most people can't do it one time. This morning was my 1,688th straight day doing this workout.
Phenomenal.
There were 10 days that I did miss, but that's because I was right down the street in the hospital bed after I got a staph infection, but I still made my wife bring me 15-pound weights, and I did 1,000 curls every day in the hospital bed, and then 1,000 curls every day until I was able to walk again. So a lot of people are like, that still counts as the unrequired. That's more impressive than the workout. So it's been a long run, but the reason why I do that is not to say like somebody else needs to do that. It's because that's become part of who I am. That's how I'm not a fraud in this space. There's plenty of guys who do this, and it's like, well, let me tell you about when I played baseball in college. I'm like, dude, that was like 25 years ago. Like, what are you doing now?
Yeah.
Right? And so there's these individuals that don't realize, like, you better be an example today. And I realized that going into Alabama. The moment I stopped being an example, for the blessing of the opportunity to be in front of those young men, which is now the mindset I took to Kansas State. It's the mindset that I take to any player. It's the mindset I take into any business. The moment I stop being the example, I'm going to tell you I'm no longer a coach. Because you cannot be a coach until you're an example of what it means to show up with great discipline every day. I know that's a long answer, but I had to give all that to you.
Well, that's a perfect answer. And I read your book right before Murphy was born. So this came out in August. Murphy was born in September, late September. And that just gave me, so I want you to kind of touch on the book, but like that for me, exactly what you just said is the environment in which you're in, which is when we reach a new level, when new experiences come, when you become a father for the first time, you have to level up. And your old standards are the old standards, and you have to set those new standards. But talk to us a little bit about that book specifically, and I'll make sure, obviously, to promote it at the end. But like, that was a really incredible book of just like really hitting you upside the head of being like, there's usually more in the tank.
Well, most people, as I alluded to earlier, I said, well, how do you show up after you win? Right? And where the burn causes you to show up after you win. Most people get seduced by success. When you get seduced by success, meaning, hey, I had a great month last month, so I'm going to go on a vacation that wasn't planned. Why would you do that? So you followed through, you identified the process worked, and then you realized because the process worked, it created the best month you've ever had. So now you're going to stop your momentum and stop doing what you did. That makes no sense at all. So then you're going to take your best month. You're then going to stop doing what you needed to do. You're going to have 2 bad months, and then you're going to call me for coaching and go, what happened? I'm going to say, well, you got seduced by success, and now you run the average. Yeah, that great month was now average when we take what happened over that 3-month period of time. People don't realize if you allow your feelings to dictate how you show up, it will break you. And the slowing breaking down of living to your emotions will impact your physical health. It'll impact your mental health. It'll impact your work, everything. And so I've just encouraged people over a long period of time, and I have to hold myself accountable to it too. You got to look yourself in the mirror every day and know like there's a standard. I know what the standard is for me to show up and win. I know what I need to do to be my best for my family. I'm clear on what I need to do to be my best in my business. I'm clear on what I want to do to serve other people every single day so that I'm hitting multiple areas. That's the prize fighter day. And the standard has to become way more powerful than the feelings. And when the standard trumps the feelings, then you say standard over feelings, and that's when you start to win at amazing levels. And that's why I wrote the book, The Standard. Because the book had never been written, which was really amazing when I thought about it. When I came up with it, my ghostwriter, Brett Colson, he's helped me on several books, Uncommon Leadership, which you have sitting there too, The Standard. I mean, I can't do what I do without the guy. I mean, as busy as we stay, because I can write my manuscript, and he's like, Ben, that's not quite a book yet, but we'll get it to a book. I love every idea, but we got to tighten some things up. And I call him, he's like, Ben, he goes, The Standard is already a book. Like, we can't write The Standard. He says, let me do some research. And he called me a couple days later and he goes, nobody has written this book. And he was like, this is a God thing. He's like, how has nobody written the book, The Standard? Yeah. And so what we did was we broke down the importance of the standard. We provide examples from our work, both in the corporate and the sports world. But we break down, here are 24 things that the standard is. And then on page 24 in the book is we actually have the 4 P's of the standard, which breaks down literally a 2-minute cycle that if you mentally lock in on this 2-minute cycle of these 4 P's of the standard, it'll lock you in to attack and win your day one day at a time. So I went back and I said, okay, over 18 years, what are the examples of people that I've worked with? What are the things that actually work? Back to that action that I talked about. So if we're working together, whether it's on Uncommon Live in our group coaching, if you're coming to a boot camp, if you're part of our Coach to Coaches program, however I'm coaching you, if I'm working with you one-on-one, I promise you we are going to break down your disciplines, cause you to think different, and cause you to have different discipline in your life. I'm not just going to hype you up because that's a bunch of nonsense, right? Motivation is fleeting. Getting somebody hyped up and then they forget what you said because you just attended a conference, you're going to get action, you're going to get discipline, we're going to evaluate your standards, and then we're going to attack the process and dominate and attack those standards one day at a time.
It's powerful. So I know I see it all the time, standards over feelings. And the other thing that I see from you all the time is champions create distance on Fridays as well. Because I think that's one of the things, like I was in medical device sales for 5 years, and that whole world was just like, got to get to Friday at 5. But then like Friday at 10 a.m., people are already like, hey, how can I start the weekend early?
Oh, they were already checked out.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, those are the individuals, and that's what it's funny that you bring up champions create distance on Fridays, especially when you focus so much on branding, right? People call me, why do you say champions create distance on Fridays? I said, all right, you're already in trouble. I mean, like the fact that I have to explain this to you, it's like the person wants me to give some, you know what it is. Yeah. It's to take that person who literally is only working 4 days a week, but physically their body shows up to the office, but they were done by 10 a.m. like you alluded to anyway. What a waste of time. So now you're actually going to go through the year only working 80% of the time. So at best, if you go back to when we were in school, you're not even giving yourself a chance to be an A student. You're literally, at best, you're going to be a B student, which means if you slip on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, now you're a C student. If your kids were doing that, literally, if your kids, you got a call from the principal and the kids say, your child like runs and hides and never comes to class on Fridays, what would you say to your child? Yet we do that with ourselves. So because you don't have the accountability of a classroom anymore, you decide to have no accountability and no discipline in your own life, yet you'll tell me you expect to win and you get after it and I grind. Give me a break. And this is, I know the veins popping now because these are the things that get me going because I want people to stop the self-talk. You know what you need to do. Go work on Friday. If you actually took the day off on Friday to be with your family, to go up with friends on a trip, then great. Go enjoy that trip wherever you're going. I want you to enjoy it. Take your time off. But champions create distance on Fridays. It's the people that I don't have to explain that to. It's the people when you hit me with a DM, like, don't DM me what is champions create distance on Fridays. I'm not going to tell you because you already know. That's what I feel like saying. Like, you already know. Stop asking me dumb questions. Just go to work. And so they know those things. But from a branding perspective, let me give you a different spin on this. I think it's probably been 10 years now that I've literally been posting that every single Friday, probably 10 years. Why do you post that every Friday? Because you're asking. Hey, why do you capitalize you and your? Because you're asking. Why do you only wear black? Everything you wear is black. Why do you do that? Because you're asking. So, Adam, that's branding, is it not?
It is 100%.
You're the guy who wears black all the time. Thank you. You'll remember who I am, right? Can't remember who that's the guy who always wears black. That's the guy who does that crazy-ass workout. It looks like he's got veins popping all over the place. Yeah. Yes, that's right. That's me.
That's branding.
That's the guy who why does the guy capitalize you every time he uses it? Because I'm the only one who does that. Mm-hmm. And now people will start to say, hey, I saw this guy on social media. He was capitalizing you. I'm like, so branding is also discipline. Mm. Branding is consistency. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things that I always share, like when it comes to coaching or no matter what business you're in, be consistent in your messaging. Don't talk about cheetahs in the wilderness one day and boxing the next day and UFC fighters the next day. Like, find what works and hammer those disciplines. Mm. Our 6 mental training tools have been the same for over 15 years. Do they need to does a prize fighter day need a new title? No, it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. You may change the principles of the disciplines of the prize fighter day, but that's what works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, the consistency is where most people fail. It's not the overnight success. The business doesn't grow with it. So they're like, all right, we got to go work.
Which, back to the Champions Create Distance on Fridays, you're naturally inclined to want to lack the discipline on Friday. Mm-hmm. So if you really want to be a champion, you can't do what regular people do. Mm-hmm. You have to choose to not be normal. And choosing to not be normal means you better work your ass off on Friday and go until you hear that ding, 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 whatever time you stop on. I don't care if you stop at 3 o'clock on Friday. Mm-hmm. Hammer until you get to 3 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm fired up just listening to this. So I know people are going to be like, all right, what all does Ben offer? I know we talked about some different things. So talk to us a little bit. Like, I obviously know some of the different things you guys have going on, but talk to us a little bit about like what all the suite of services or products that you guys have.
Well, if you go to bennewman.net, you'll see down at the bottom there's 9 different things that if you would have told me that we had 9 different pieces of our company, from a speakers bureau to a publishing arm to a coaching arm, to an events company, to me coming and doing a keynote, to all these things, to a program called Coach to Coaches, which is probably one of the most significant things we've done that people pushed me to do for over a decade, and I'm finally doing it, which is actually teaching coaches and leaders how to teach and coach. Because it's needed. Because there aren't enough people. So that is, all of that is listed down at the bottom of the site, and I always share with people, yeah, there might be ways that I can help you, but you know what? Maybe I'm not the guy for you. Mm-hmm. But you've got to find those ways where you can improve things that you're doing. Mm-hmm. So if there's something that we do in our suite of services that can help, great. We would love to have a conversation with you and see what we can do to help. But if it's not me, it's got to be somebody. Yeah. It's got to be a coach. It's got to be a mentor. For those of you that are listening that are like, I have no money for coach. Well, you know what's free? Going to a friend of yours who doesn't have money either and saying, what are we going to do to hold each other accountable? Like, that's how much I care about people actually driving action. Not let's just motivate each other. I'm talking about like hold each other accountable to what you need to do. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a position where we can help you, go to bennewman.net, get in contact with our team. Let's have a phone call and see what we can do to help you. But if not, don't have an excuse to do nothing for some excuse that's just an excuse. Find a way to take action.
Love it. And I know a lot of people listening to this are both here in St. Louis, but also people that go to events. So tell us a little bit about your event that's happening in April.
So in April here in St. Louis, on April the 13th, we're going to be out at First Form headquarters, which I have an amazing relationship with Andy and Sal for years. And Sal and I got together. I threw the idea out to him, like, man, I want to come do something at First Form. If anybody has not been to First Form headquarters, I promise you your cost of the ticket to come to this event is worth it just to be able to step inside a First Form headquarters and just to see the standard of excellence. I would almost marry it identically to what I felt when I go into Alabama. Wow. It is the same. Like you walk in and it's an expectation to how clean it is, to how the weights in their gym, which looks like the most beautiful health club you've ever seen in your life, the way that looks, to their locker room, everything is beyond a standard that you would ever expect. So we've picked the most amazing venue where you cannot go to events. And they're allowing us to have an amazing event. And then I said, okay, in an Olympic year, let's go get some Olympians. Let's go get the most decorated female Olympic champion of all time, Jackie Joyner-Kersee. Let's go get Chris Pronger, who is a 2-time gold medalist in the Olympics, a top 100 NHL player of all time, and a Hall of Famer, MVP, Stanley Cup champion. Pretty good resume. Yeah. Let's go get Jerry Rice, the greatest to ever do it, right? All the MVPs, Hall of Famer. Let's go get Trent Shelton, one of the greatest motivators walking the face of the earth today that drives action and disciplines with mindset. And then what Sal's going to deliver is just going to blow people away. So that's what we do with our events. I don't just go and get as many speakers as I can. Everybody is chosen for a reason. I think it's an Olympic year. Let's give people an Olympic experience. Let's ask questions of Jackie. What was it like to compete? And then in 2 months, 3 months, you're going to watch Americans competing for our country. Those are the things I think about when it comes to an event. Very intentional, very detailed. And that's why when people come to our events, they say, this is not like anything I've ever been to. Which people who came to our boot camp in Las Vegas in October, we had Ed Mylett, we had Tim Grover, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Justin Gatlin, all these champions that attacked every area of your life, from your physical to your mental to your action, all of it. And people don't go to events like that. It's typically, hey, I'm going to get a bunch of friends and I'm going to throw together a bunch of speakers and put out a flyer, and here's what it is. Everything's very intentional. So if you come to an experience with us, it's going to be intentional. It's going to change your life.
Love it. And where can people find out more about that event?
You could go to bennewman.net and you can find out information there. You can go to my Instagram, is probably @continuedfight. That's probably the easiest way to do it. It's probably just to hit the link tree on @continuedfight. That also will take you to all the different things that we do.
Love it. Love it. What is one thing, as we're finishing up this episode, that you would leave that we maybe haven't talked about today with the audience?
Greatest life lesson I ever learned, which came from my mom. We could talk about Alabama. We could talk about UFC champions. We could talk about champions in business that I've worked with. The greatest life lesson I've ever learned came from my mom. It's not how long you live. It's how you choose to live your life.
It's an incredible way to end this episode. Ben, thank you so much for coming in. This was incredible. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. So I hope I was a good podcast host.
Hey, I appreciate your persistence. I appreciate the resilience. I appreciate just you being who you are and what you're doing. And I love how you show up in this world. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you again to the audience today. Please be sure to leave us a 5-star review, especially after this incredible episode. We're making a big push for reviews this year, and it definitely moves the needle. And remember, authority isn't built overnight. It's built over time.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. We sure do appreciate it. Until next time, friends.